This was the third homicide. God, every time. Hello dears, Natalie Locke here with episode 43 of Write the Story, where I give you a prompt and 10 words out of this book for you to write the story. The way I normally do this, I take 5 to 10 minutes to outline, and then I take about 20 minutes, sometimes it lasts longer because I get interrupted, to write the story. If this is your first time doing a flash fiction, I recommend no time limit whatsoever. I try to hover around 600 words, but I can say I busted that today. Otherwise, really, at the end of the day, if you're under 1,000 words, that counts as a flash fiction. If you're under 250 words, by the way, that counts as a microfiction. In case you were wondering. Let me go ahead and give you the prompt for today's episode. The prompt is a police investigation. The words to include are ominous, arrest, decay, squeal, reduce, feline, avoid, feet, blackberry, and bark. I am really excited for this story. I was trying to think a police investigation, what am I going to do? And I ended up going back to a previous flash fiction, episode 20, which I'll link here, where I kind of had the other side of the police investigation, and it was a journalist crossing the line. And here, I kind of went off that, and it gave me my premise, and it helped steer the story of where it was going to be. So now I was looking at it from the police detective's perspective to try to get where we needed to be on this story. The ideas I had on what to put in here was asking for got any arrests, saying that the body hasn't decayed yet. We needed to reduce the number of onlookers and increase the barrier so that to push the people back away from the scene. I said it was very feline, that the entire house was spick and span, but I ended up twisting that a little bit, but still keeping with the mindset, which you'll see in the story. The scene was ominous. I was thinking there was clouds, and then I was thinking tires squealed as it pulled up real quick. The body's feet was sticking out of a blackberry bush, because I really did not want to go technology with the word blackberry. For barked, I decided to put it as past tense, as something that someone said, so he barked. And then I was thinking for avoid to say you're avoiding the questions. Now, what ended up happening is I kept barked, I kept the body wasn't decayed yet, I kept reduce the amount of onlookers, I kept feline in its essence, I changed ominous a little bit, but I did keep feet poking out from underneath the blackberry bush, and I did keep tires squealing. So 7 out of 10 words stayed the same. Now let me go ahead and read to you the story. This was the third homicide this month. All victims are men, in their late 20s. The question is, why is this guy's truck missing? None of the other victims had their vehicles taken. Jim originally thought this was a robbery gone wrong, but the pristine house and heavy book next to the body matched the MO of the other homicides. We got a serial killer, he thought. Jim pulled out his notepad from his utility belt and began to walk through the house. He noticed some glass sitting on top of the trash. Most likely not involved with the murder, since there was no blood on the glass. The odd part was the feline touch to the kitchen counters. There were no papers, utensils, dishes, or even appliances on them. Opening the cupboards with his handkerchief revealed a toaster and coffee maker. This echoed the other victims' houses. It was just too ominous for anyone to keep their house this tidy, especially 3 blue-collar men. Their boots were even methodically placed in their closet without any dirt on them, as if they avoided all non-cement surfaces. Jim could maybe let one guy be this clean, but 3 makes this an MO. He made a few notes in his notepad before returning it to his belt. He walked to the front door, but stopped just as his hand wrapped around the doorknob. There was a frame on the entry table with shards of glass coming out, partially covering the picture it enclosed. It was the victim standing by his kill from a hunting trip, rifle in hand. Nodding, Jim proceeded out the front door. "Hey, Keeler," Jim's supervisor barked. He approached Jim so he could speak softer. "We need to reduce these onlookers. Put up a screen in front of the body and move the barrier out past the sidewalk." "You got it, Captain," Jim said with a nod. After moving the barrier, Jim started to set up the screen. There wasn't much to see of the body, with the feet just sticking out from under the blackberry bush. The head was the messiest part since, like the other victims, this guy had his head bashed in with a heavy book. The first guy got hit with an encyclopedia, an estimated of 14 times, giving the name Encyclopedia Killer. They just didn't know that the killer was going to strike again. The second guy was hit, oddly enough, with a large copy of the Bible. The newest victim had a hefty hardback of The History of Guns to thank for his predicament. Jim struggled with the screen. Mike, the first officer on scene, came to Jim's rescue. "Thanks for the hand," Jim said. Mike nodded without a response. As Mike turned, Jim spoke out. "Hey, can you do me another favor?" Jim asked. Mike raised an eyebrow. "Could you maybe have your first interview with Stacy from Channel 4? Jim tried to appear nonchalant, but he took a step closer, waiting for Mike's response. Mike shrugged. "Sure. You still trying to get out of the friend zone?" Jim laughed nervously. "Hey, she still is the person that calls me whenever those other guys treat her like shit. One day she'll realize not all guys are assholes." Mike chuckled. "Well, I think the victims would agree with you, but their attacker would agree with Stacy. We've uncovered some pretty rough light on the last two victims. One had a revenge porn arrest, where the charges were dropped, and the other's dating history is girls straight out of high school. As bad as that is, I don't think anyone deserves to die over it. I'm all for stopping misogyny, but not at the cost of lives," Jim said. Tires squealed on the street, and the Channel 4 news van pulled up. Behind the van, a taxi pulled up as a woman in a pencil skirt stepped out with her clutch in hand. Jim waved at Stacy as she gave him a bright smile. "She won't always see me as a friend," he thought. So, I'll admit, when it comes to the story, it's not as powerful with a big churn at the end like my other stories. But that's because this is more like a sequel, and there might even be a future story in this. Because if you read this story or listen to it, and then listen to episode 20 as well, there is a lot to uncover there between the two stories, two different perspectives, and I find that more interesting. I think it's really great. Regarding my least favorite line, it's actually a line that I didn't include, and that's, I mentioned the glass being broken and inside the trash can, and then I mentioned the broken picture frame by the front door on the entry table, but I didn't really take it more than there. I was thinking it should be taken a further step, maybe mention they should be dusted for prints, but of course we're dealing with a serial killer who knows what they're doing, so no prints would come up. At least that's the headcanon I have. But I kind of left that off, and when you leave little tidbits in there and then don't bring them back, one, it makes the reader think it's not important. Two, it also seems like you have loose strands going with your story, and no one likes loose strands. They kind of like things neat and tidy. Now, three, if you don't mention it again, it also comes across like a red herring. So why would you even mention it? With a true red herring, you would stretch it out even further than just mentioning broken glass, found the frame that probably the broken glass came from. There's got to be more there. Either way, it's kind of halfway where it needs to be on that point. So I guess the main thing to fix here is making sure I tie up all loose ends. Now my favorite line. My favorite line is the very end, because if you've listened to or read episode 20 of A Journalist Has Gone Too Far, the line, "She won't always see me as a friend," makes you worry for Jim. We know Jim likes Stacy, but Stacy's... you should really listen to episode 20 to see what I'm talking about. So I feel like this line has so much weight behind it between this episode, episode 43, and tying back to episode 20. Just, there's so much there. Hope you enjoyed my version of episode 43, as dark as it was, and I hope you find enjoyment in your own passions, whether it be writing or any creative outlet. Just keep looking for that enjoyment every day, every week, every month, and every year.